Okay, guys, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, this is our ongoing section, monthly section. And today we have an interesting speaker in the name of Ayomide Oluwaga. Ayomide have worked extensively in the Azure community as well as in student ambassador program in Nigeria. So today he'll be taking us through the interesting section actually, Azure Virtual Machines, which is one of my interesting areas within Azure. So you'll be talking about optimizing and scaling for organizational efficiency using virtual machines. So he will cover the fundamentals concept of Azure VMs and dive into advanced techniques for optimizing and managing VM deployments. So, Ayomide, it's a pleasure to having you.
Thank,
The floor is all yours.
thank you very much, Mr. CJ. I'm also
You're
happy to
welcome.
be here today. And
Welcome.
today we'll be looking at Azure Virtual Machines, optimizing and scaling for organizational efficiency. That is trying to make sure that an organization has the most of virtual machines. So I'm going to be displaying the screen now so we can move along with it. Okay, I hope the screen is visible at this point.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we'll start by of course, the normal thing everybody wants to know, and that is exactly what virtual machines are. And virtual machines are actually the most popular resource you meet on the marketplace, right after storage. Sometimes you meet storage ahead of virtual machines. So what exactly are they? When we are talking about virtual machines, basically virtual machines are just software emulations of a physical computer. That is, rather than getting so many systems for a particular purpose, you could have one system and have multiple machines running simultaneously on that particular system. That's just the basic about virtual machines. And as those virtual machines goes one spot further to make sure that virtual machines are accessible on the cloud. So as you can see, it supports a variety of operating systems. It can support operating systems like Windows and Linux, and has been used by different organizations to manage their needs. So what exactly are we looking at today? We'll be diving deep into what virtual machines are. We'll look at how organizations effectively leverage this particular resource to improve their scalability, their efficiency, and cost effectiveness within the organization. So we'll also cover the fundamentals, of course, and then move into the more technical part of, of it. So let's take just a quick look at the benefits of having a virtual machine in an organization. We have flexibility over there. Flexibility allows an organization to move between sizes, between resources simultaneously without having uh, to move into a different size range entirely. So basically, scalability allows the organization to scale their compute resources up or down as needed, ensuring that the applications and services can handle the varying workloads effectively. Now, elasticity is more of a probability, just like scalability, but more automatic. And this is also one of the benefits of the cloud. We also have high availability, meaning that it is always available. It has a very high SLA. And then we also have the storage options, as we can see over here. Storage options in the cloud are quite a lot more. In virtual machines, the storage options are actually more large compared to having to get it uh, let's say from the market or something. So The storage options are more effective. We have better networking capability and a higher integration with Azure services. There are some things we should know about Azure virtual machines. When you are using virtual machines, you're actually keeping your budgets in check. With low cost per second billing, you get billed per second or per the hour, and you pay for only what you use. So that is more of a property of operational expenditure, that's OPEX. So the cloud is on a pay-as-you-go basis. So you can also scale from 1 to thousands of virtual machines in minutes, which allows the organization to increase their bus load or reduce it as effectively as they choose. And also, as we see, you can also encrypt sensitive data, protect your virtual machines. You can also choose between Linux or Windows images on the marketplace. Now, we should try to know the difference between Azure virtual machines and on-premise virtualization solutions. So, of course, when I mentioned virtual machines before, I gave an example. I gave a definition of it being a software emulation of a physical system. That is also possible on premise. So now we are trying to look at the difference between Azure virtual machines and these on-premise virtualization solutions. The first difference you will notice is the management of the hardware. Azure completely eliminates the need for you to manage the hardware. The hardware management is moved as a responsibility to the cloud service provider. So the cloud service provider, in this case, Microsoft, would be in charge of managing all hardware and hardware needs in the organization. We also have the next option being a global reach. So Microsoft right now has about 60 plus regions worldwide. That's quite a lot of regions. So we have 60 regions worldwide. Yeah, it's 50. The mind that that's more like an whole thing. It's about 60 plus in about 140 countries. And you can see it's widely distributed over the globe. So there's more reach for your business in that particular situation. We also have the scaling and flexibility option, of course. You have a bigger option of increasing or decreasing your sizes, the amount of RAM you have, the amount of RAM you need. If your business grows, all of a sudden, or the company releases a new product or a new service into the stream or into the market, it's easier for you to scale up rather than buying new hardware and getting someone to configure that new hardware. So the flexibility is there and the scalability is also there when you are using the cloud. That is, when you're using Azure rather than using an on-premise virtualization solution. Another big one we'll probably see later on is about you being extremely having a very high SLA, especially in the area of storage services and virtual machines and the rest. So we'll look at this topic. How do you choose the right virtual machine size? This is a very important topic because organizations suffer from this particular issue. Now, at times you want to deploy a machine and you don't really know how what size you should use in that situation, and you end up deploying something around an n size virtual machine, and then it leads to you underusing that particular virtual machine and overpaying for it. It's not a topic that is quite new. It's something that's happened to a lot of organizations. At the end of the month, they're probably paying thousands of dollars for something they should be paying hundreds for. So that's because they do not know the right size to choose, the right size of virtual machine to choose for their workload. For instance, you want to deploy, let's assume you want to deploy something of a web application. So you want to deploy a web application and you are deploying something that has GPU graphics installed on it. That becomes quite a, it just just a waste of money and resources, because you actually be paying for those resources that you are using at that particular point. So choosing the right virtual machine size is a very important thing, and we'll be looking at it in this class. And if you look in here, there are two ways you could actually get to choose the right VM size. The first one is, of course, to evaluate the workload requirements and select the appropriate virtual machine size. That means you look at what is being demanded by that organization and then pick the right size as according to their demands, that is, as per their demands. So you pick the right size based on what they are demanding for. Selecting the appropriate VM size is very critical, and it's actually will determine whether that particular organization would want to stay on the cloud or not. Now, that is just the first method. The other one we have there is to utilize the Azure Virtual Machine recommendation feature. We are going to take a look at this in the labs. We're going to take a look at this as we move forward. So Azure also suggests sizes to you based on your particular workload. This is actually a very, very good, you know, it's a good thing, because the Azure is trying to make sure that you are watching your cost savings on the cloud. So it helps organizations if they know how to utilize this particular tool. In the next point, we are looking at the AZ VM size recommendation feature, which comes with Azure. It actually comes with spot recommendations. That's a spot discount. If you are familiar with creating virtual machines, you should have noticed the spot discount buttons, but we are going to go through it anyway, and you are going to see it. So as we can see in the guide, we'll explore the essential factors for evaluating the workload requirements and leveraging on Azure's virtual machine size recommendation feature to make informed decisions. So we'll be looking at that as we move forward in the class. But for now, we need to take a look at the demand consideration for workloads for organizations. Take note that what we are doing is still trying to optimize virtual machines in a way that the organizations can benefit from it without spending too much or having to deploy something which would lead to a bottleneck in their services. That is, they might actually deploy a size that is too small for the services they offer, and that would lead to a bottleneck. And then it looks as if the cloud is not efficient. So right now we are looking at how to make sure that the organization has everything they need for their workloads when picking a virtual machine size. The first option we have there is the CPU and memory option. You need to evaluate the CPU and memory requirements of the applications in order to determine the right balance of processing power and memory capacity. We also have storage there, in which you need to access the storage needs. Of course, you need to access the storage needs, including the inputs and output operations per second. That's the IOPS. You should have seen IOPS. If you open your taskbar right now, that is, you've turned on the taskbar on your Windows machine, you are going to see the IOPS option in there. So the IOPS, they are trying to access the storage needs and also the throughput to ensure that the application performance is quite smooth. So another thing they would want to look at is the network bandwidth. Of course, the network bandwidth is quite important because you need to determine the required network bandwidth to accommodate the data transfers and user access efficiently. And we have second to the last being the GPU. Everyone knows what GPU is. That is the graphics processing unit, in contrast to the central processing unit, which is CPU. And you need to check the requirements if the workload involves graphic intensive tasks. Of course, you should consider virtual machine sizes that support GPU acceleration. And the last thing you should also look when you are creating the workload for an organization is if they have specialized workloads. That is, they might have some certain applications that might demand specific VM configurations. So they might be looking for something that has high performance computing. That is something like HPC, that's high performance computing. We call it HPC, of course, or something memory optimized. That is, they want to base more on the number of RAM, the amount of RAM they can get, something that needs a high memory, or something that is just based on compute. That is, they need a bigger compute size for it. So they are specialized workloads. Microsoft tries their best to give directions on how you are going to move around with this. But there are situations where people go with the wrong workload. So that is also a consideration. We'll also be looking at the VM sizes. I just put up this because it's actually important that you know what the sizes are, what they are useful for. This is actually the most popular. This is what you will mostly see when you are on the portal, because most people come on the portal with the mind of general purpose. You know, you just like, okay, I just want this to work. I just want to make sure that I am able to maybe deploy a virtual machine. And most times when you get to an organization, it becomes a problem because you are so used to general purpose computing, and you might not be able to determine which size is best for the organization. And that's why I put up this, so you can have an overview of the VM sizes as we can see on the screen. So of course, the A series, as you know, Microsoft divides the sizes into different series. Each of these series contains different sizes of virtual machines. We have the A series, that is for the development or testing operations. If you are into this, you will probably want to use it for development options. Like, that is not in a production environment. You just want to use it for testing. Maybe your services within the organization, you want to test up your services. That is when you would want to use the A series. We also have the B series in there, and the B series is actually very good for economical busting. So that is, it's a bit bigger than the D series, but I usually see them together most times. So the B series and the D series. The D series is general purpose computing. The B series is used for economical busting. We have DC series, which is a subset of the D series, which is used to protect data in use. We have the E series for memory, hyper-threaded applications optimized. Don't worry, I don't know all these things offhand, so it's not a must. You have to keep that, in your head, of course. So it's just something about knowing what the right size to use should be, what size should be used for that particular organization. So you may get to an organization and they are all creating high-end graphics applications. Of course, you would want to give them something that has high performance computing, or something with a GPU like the N series. So that is the reason for this particular session. Now, if we also look at it, we were going to have an hands-on session, which would help us with efficient deployment for the organizations. And I put up a sample here, which I think would be able to, help us in explaining and working towards what we need to understand in this lecture. So as you can see, this is a sample workload for XYZ enterprises. They have a web application. They want to host a web application. And the expected traffic they have here, that is the traffic they're expecting, the one they are, moving towards their traffic. They're expecting from moderate to high web traffic with potential fluctuations, which is one thing the cloud is really good for, fluctuations. That is where elasticity comes into play. And you can see the operating system there is Windows Server, and the database being used is the Azure SQL database, which is a platform as a service offering. And the number of virtual machine instances we have here is okay, the organization here is saying they plan to deploy 2 virtual machine instances for load balancing. So they are planning to deploy 2 VM instances for load balancing. When we are saying load balancing, we mean the traffic coming into those virtual machines should be evenly distributed. So you attach a load balancer in between those 2 virtual machines, and for high availability purposes. So they want to make sure that, okay, if one VM goes down, the other one is still running their workload. So that's why they have 2 virtual machines in there. And as you can see, the VM size they want is a D series virtual machine with 2 virtual CPUs and 7 gigabytes of RAM for each instance. So we can see they are giving more information here that this size is suitable for the initial as anticipated load, which means they are not exactly sure if this load is going to go up or go down in the future. So it might need some scaling in the future. The storage type over here is the standard SSD, and that is for a balance of performance and costs. Now, if we are to look at it properly, this is a very good example of what a company would probably need. You might actually meet companies that have no idea what they need, and you have to uh, make up that, the plan, the workload for them based on their consumption, based on what they use. So looking at this, we can easily bring up some things. We can easily get some things out of it. It's a web application that needs to run on Windows Server. They're expecting medium to moderate web traffic. They need it to have an Azure SQL database, of course, and they need about 2 virtual machine instances for load balancing. In this particular situation, you wouldn't want to create a virtual machine, just one virtual machine. The most important thing to note here is the fact that they expect it to be scaled up in future. So if you are creating one single virtual machine, it's not even a good practice to just create a virtual machine just like that for an organization. Anything could happen. They could overuse it during the time. So it's better to create a virtual machine skill set. It's a very good practice to create a skill set for an organization, even if they are saying they are not sure and they need only one. Yes, create a skill set and put just one for them. So in this particular situation, we are going to create these virtual machines, and I'm just going to display on the screen so we can have a look at what is going on there. So I'm here in my portal, of course, and we are going to create this sample workload for XYZ enterprises. Of course, we are going to go ahead and go to VMSS. You can go through your search button. You can also, I don't know if it's actually on the sidebar right now. Okay, it's not on the sidebar, but you could also go into create a resource, and from there you create a virtual machine skill set. Everybody would have access to this because it is globally available. That is, this it's globally present rather. They are always going to be present. So you can just go in there and type it in. On the other hand, I'm just going to go the long way. We're going to click on VMSS. So we are creating a virtual machine skill set for this particular organization. So here it's taking me into the marketplace. I do not want to be in the marketplace right now. I could just click this and create it, but just to demonstrate, I'm just going to try to show us what else could happen in case someone else decides to go through the search button instead. So this is what it looks like. This is creating a virtual machine skill set. On the other hand, if you chose to go through the other method and type in VMSS, virtual machine skill sets, of course, we should see something like this on the screen. Okay, so we are right here, and then you can just click create a virtual machine skill set. So we are creating a skill set. You can see we are back at the same point. It's not really different. It's not even different. There is no difference between these. We are creating a virtual machine skill set for XYZ enterprises. They noted here that the application type they wanted was a web application, and they are anticipating high web traffic and fluctuations during peak hours and special events. So the operating system here is a Windows server, and they want a database of Azure SQL database, of course, and the number of virtual machine instances they need right now are 2. They need 2 virtual machines for now. And the reason for that is for load balancing purposes as well as high availability purposes. So you have that in there, and we also have the virtual machine sizes. Of course, as usual, when you are creating any resource in Azure, you are presented with a screen similar to this. First step will always be to select your subscription, and here I'm on the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. Then you go ahead and select the resource group. I would choose to create a new group for this purpose, and of course the group cannot include spaces. And then you say okay, and yeah, we have a new resource group. It's as easy as creating a folder. So a resource group basically is just a container for your resources. So when you have a resource group, just a moment. And where's my pen? So when you have a resource group, of course, it's basically a container for your resources. It's a good deal if you know how to use this, if you know all the rules attached to having a resource group. Of course, when you have a, give me a moment, I need to make some changes here. Okay, so we have a resource group. Let's call this our resource group, of course. And then within this resource group, that is where all the resources you create during this particular situation will be stored in. That is your virtual machine. The IP address would also be stored in here, as well as other resources like the storage, that is the disk, the virtual machine's disk, of course, will also be stored inside the resource group. Actually, when you're creating a virtual machine, you might be creating up to around 6 extra resources from the portal. So it's very possible. When we go through it, we are going to see all of that. And then we've created a resource group where we want our resources to be stored at this particular moment. And now we are going to go ahead and put in the skill set details. So take note, anyone on red is mandatory. You must put in the details there. And of course, we are going to put in a virtual machine skill set name. So let's put in a name for this. I'll call it, of course, demo. And yep, our virtual machine skill set name is created. I don't know if we can put a space in there. Okay, that's it. As well as very strict about these rules. And then we have the region. Of course, when we are talking of regions, we are talking of locations. That is locations where you want these resources to be stored. So as we said, Azure has 60 plus regions or in 140 countries worldwide. So they have 60 plus regions in 140 countries. Take it that a region is just simply, we have to look at it. If you have a region like RG1, this region is a collection of physical data centers. A data center could actually contain a whole lot of servers. So if you've seen a data center before, you see that it contains a bunch of servers. You could have up to 200, 1,000 servers, even more within a single data center. So this resource we are creating will be residing on one of these data centers within this region. So region, within this region, the resource we create would be residing on one of them. It might be on this one, it might be on this one, it might be in one of these, depending on what we select. But when we select the region, we know it stays within that region. The reasons why you select region, just in case you're going to work in an organization, the reason why you select a region is because the organization needs to make sure that their resources do not go beyond that particular region. And also, if your customers are in a place like US, for instance, and you are here in Nigeria, but you have more customers in US, you would want to create your resource in a region close to where your customers are. So that is another reason for selecting regions. That's another reason for selecting regions. Now, when we come to the point of availability zones, we are going to understand what they are. So I just might leave this here. Oh, look at that. Availability zone is right the next thing. So we have availability zones. Azure actually divides all data centers within a single region into 3 availability zones. So if I'm clicking on this, I know I'm going to find zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. The reason for availability zone is just for redundancy, redundancy at the region level. So it's not going beyond the region. What happens here is, like I said, you might have your resource stored here, but what if, just what if, just the what if now, what if something happens in this particular region and they lose perhaps all the power, or perhaps their cooling system, or maybe not even any of those. Maybe what they lost was just the entire data center, perhaps due to an earthquake. So what happens to everyone who has deployed their resource in this particular location? It's gone. Basically, it's gone. And that is why Azure has created availability zones. So what happens here is, I have this sample region here that has just 6 data centers. And what happens here is there is a grouping of the zones into availability zones. So we might have these 2 data centers, a grouping of the data centers rather, is an availability zone. And we will call this availability zone 1. And we have another group of data centers here. And we are going to call them availability zone 2. And we have another group of data centers over here. We are going to call them also availability zone 3. So just like that, a grouping of data centers. So what happens there is that the resources in here are being replicated here. So if this particular data center goes down, the workloads will continue running like they were never interrupted. So that is the idea. This whole sketch I'm making, this whole crazy sketch right now, that is what it's pointing to. So you have the region and the zones within the region. The zones are just simply a collection of data centers. So that is basically about that. And we can choose not to select a data center. As you can see, it's not a requirement. It's not actually, starred. It's not starred in red. So we can choose to just ignore it. But for the purpose of this class, I'm going to select one. You can choose to select all 3 if you want. That means you want your workload in all 3 availability zones. That is going to cost a little bit more. But for this class, we are just going to move forward with just one, of course. Now, there's a location I like picking. Of course, there's a particular location I like to go with. It's the Australia East location. And of course, you can see the availability zone changes. It tries to adjust this. It tries to adjust itself because the region has been changed. Now, notice there are 2 types of regions here. We have the recommended regions. Each of these regions have 3 availability zones. And then we have the other regions here. These ones possibly might not have an availability zone. So you can see we have no availability zone available for the location that you have selected. Right now, we are still trying to create a sample workload for XYZ enterprises. I'm just going to put up what they need here. They want, give me a minute. Okay, so they want an OS of Windows. So it's Windows Server. So that's Windows Server. And the database, let's call it the DB, is actually the Azure SQL, the SQL database, ASQL DB. And they also want 2 VMs. And apart from that, the size is the D2 size with 2 vCPUs and 7 gig of RAM. So they need 7 gigabytes of RAM. So I think, okay, yes, we also have the disk type to be SSD, and it is a managed disk. So SSD and a managed disk. So those are the options we have here. Oh, I'm going to have to go back to my selection here. Let me see, where was it? Okay, Australia East, and my availability zone. I picked zone 2 this time. And of course, we have the orchestration mode, and this is just going to try to put to you what type of virtual machines do you want in here. Do you want identical virtual machines, or do you want different type of virtual machines in there? So if you want different type of virtual machines, you will select flexible. That means you can have Windows and Linux joined together if you like. And if not, if you want only Windows virtual machines, you are going to select uniform. So as I can see in this particular organization, the operating system they want to use is Windows Server. And of course, I'm going to make it uniform because I feel like, okay, Windows Server is okay. So uniform is what I'm going to pick. In some instances, you would want to pick flexible if they are not exactly sure whether they want Linux or Windows Server in this particular situation. So it's possible the organization does not know what they want. And in that situation, you just pick flexible. So you can as well push in Linux servers into it. You can go ahead and explain to them the differences between Linux and Windows servers, but it is ultimately best to be on the safe side. So of course, we are selecting uniform right now. And we have the security type here. Of course, we have 3 types of security. We have the standard, which does not offer so much level of security. This is an organization, so I would want to leave them on the trusted launch. The confidential is actually very expensive. We are going to stay on the trusted launch for this organization. I'm trying to speed things up a bit. And the image is just simply the operating system that you would want to use for your virtual machine. As we know, it's a Windows server. As we can see from here, the operating system is Windows Server. They didn't specify whether 2016, 2019, 2022, or 2012. Of course, you go for the updated version because it's always best to use the updated version. So, of course, I'm scrolling down and I can see some error messages that were showing up, but now you see that it has automatically adjusted. So of course, we have the VM architecture, whether you want to use ARM64 or a 64-bit based system. That's just the architecture. If you can notice, there's no 32-bit system. That is the x86 architecture. It's not here. The 8086 architecture is not here. It's just the 64. And here we come to run with Azure Spot Discount. And this is where you would want to utilize Azure's automatic feature for selecting. So I will go through this just to explain it to everyone, because this is a very important part of the class, of the session. And here you have the option here to run with Azure Spot Discount. So what exactly is Spot Discount? So when you get to an organization, rather, when a big organization like Microsoft, for instance, that are offering cloud services like this, there's always some extra space that is not being used actively. So that is what the spot discount is. So it allows you to utilize that extra space at a very, very, very cheap rate. So if you see here, I'm supposed to pay for a size of $91 per month. If I select spot discount, it begins to recalibrate, and I can see I'm paying $0.027 an hour. So that is actually very, very important. That is very, very, very cheap. So that's a very, very good thing. As we can see, this is where we select the sizes. Oh yes, and now there's a sports tab. If you see a sport tab appears, immediately I select the sport discount. The sport tab would be activated. If I go in there now, I know it won't be able to, it won't really give me much options because I didn't select sport. So I'm going to go back to basics. It wasn't like that before, but this is as always ever upgrading. So that is something that is new. So we are not going to the sport tab yet. We are going to configure there. The problem with sport discount, please do not use sport discount for production purposes, or basically do not use spot discount for production purposes. It's a bad idea, because anytime the organization needs, anytime Microsoft needs that particular space, they can call it back and you lose access to all your resources. So it's a good thing not to run with spot discounts when you are going into production. But if you are in development stage, testing stage, you can go ahead and utilize spot discount. So I would want to show you what goes on in spot discount. I'll leave it on for now, although I'm going to turn it off later, because this organization does not need spot discount right now. So of course, as we said, we have the standard data size. I'm going to go into see recommended sizes, so we can see the sizes that are being offered by Microsoft. So yes, when I clicked on the recommended sizes, I could see the Azure Spot recommendations, which is what we are actually looking towards. So Azure is trying to help you with your peak of a size of a virtual machine. So right here, you see that tell us what size you're interested in, and we will show you similar sizes across selected regions that might be better suited for your needs. So that is something they are trying to do. And I might say, okay, show me recommendations similar to this. And I'm waiting for reply. And I'm seeing recommendations similar to that. I can also try to change some things, change some options here. Let me just go ahead and clear the screen so we can have a very clear overview. So of course, here we have all of these. This is the eviction rate, 5% eviction rate, between 5 to 20% eviction rate. That is how they chase you out of that particular resource. So I have all of these various sizes offered to me. And from what the organization said, they wanted a size of DSV2 with two virtual CPUs. And I should go ahead and write that. So they need two virtual CPUs, and that's 7 gigabytes of RAM. So it's a DS2 V2 size, and they need two vCPUs and 7 gigabytes of RAM. So yep, and if we look through here, we actually cannot see one of 7 gigabytes at this point. There, I can't find a RAM that has 7 gigabytes here. And DSV2, let's try looking for DSV2 in here. Okay, I have DSV2 here. It's loading up. Take note that you can still change the size after you've created the virtual machine. It's very possible for you to go ahead and change the size later. So I can see the DS-V2 size here. It is a very good one. And it has 2 virtual CPUs, just like I want, 2 virtual CPUs and 7 gigabytes of RAM. That's actually very, very good. That's a very good one. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And yes, of course. Okay, I need to clear the screen right now. So we've selected the size. Did I do something wrong here? Okay, let me just go ahead and select the image again. I selected Windows 2022 server, and I'm turning off spot discount because I really don't need it in this particular situation. And the size that I selected is actually not showing up here, so I'm going to go back into the sizes. And as soon as I turn off spot discount, of course, once I turn off spot discount, I do not have access to the spot recommendations anymore. So I could just go ahead and select my particular size, DS version 2, and what exactly do I want? DS version 2, general purpose. This is 1 gigabyte of RAM, 3.5 gigabytes. I'm going to specify for 7 gig. We can't stay so long on this. And I can see I have 7 gig already for the DS-V2 size. You can take note of all of these sizes here already. And when I click on it, I click select. I can see the total amount I'll be spending per month will be $122. And then I'm going select, and we've selected that particular size. Now there seems for this particular image, there might not be that size. So let me go for the 2019 or 2016 version, one of them. So I'm going back in there. DS version 2, the RAM, 7 gigabytes of RAM, select. And now for this image, it is available. So yes, let's move on to the next point. This is where you create the administrator account. Of course, if you are installing an operating system, you need to have an account, an administrator account, of course. And this is where we go ahead and put in the username for that account, which would be, okay, I'll just use my YouTube name instead, anyway. And I'll put in a password, which is not supposed to be known, because if your password is something that people know, then you should be ready for data breaches. So yes, password is okay. And then we are going to the licensing. Please click that you have licensing. Take note of Azure hybrid benefits. If you have Azure hybrid benefits, you can earn up to 49% discount when you are using hybrid benefits. So hybrid benefits is more of a point where you already have, let's say, a Windows server on-prem. Maybe you've already paid for a license for it. You can bring the license down to the cloud. So I'm confirming the button over there that I have a Windows server license, and I'm just going to go ahead and click next to support. The reason why I'm going through the next options here is because it is necessary that we select the disk size. So right now we've already selected, I'm going to minimize this so we can see the screen. We've already gone, we've selected the operating system. At this point, we've selected the virtual machine size. We haven't selected the number of virtual machines to deploy. I'm going to look into that now. We are about to select the size, rather, that is the disk type for our virtual machine. So we are going back in there. We are going to select a disk type appropriate. So they are asking here for a standard SSD. So the premium SSD is actually for sensitive workloads, that is high performance workloads, it must not go down. You pay a lot for it. And standard SSD is more for the web servers kind of situation. The standard HDD, which is the hard disk drive. I know we all know the difference between the hard disk drive and the SSD. Of course, the solid state drive, and the hard disk drive uses disk technology. Solid state drive is way more better for performance. That is, it's faster. HDD is best for backup because over time it can store more information. SSD might lose its information over time. So that is just a little bit about all of that. We have the premium ones here too, but we want to stick with the standard SSD. So that is what the organization asked for. They didn't ask for any other thing else here. And we can go ahead and move to the networking. The organization would like to use the standard networking offered by Microsoft at this point. So standard networking offered by Microsoft. We're going to click next, and we do not need to do anything next here. Oh, we need to do something here. We need to do something here. Load balancing. Load balancing is quite important. So according to them, they are creating this tool for load balancing and high availability purposes. So I might just go ahead and activate a load balancer. So you might see here that we have a little option here. I'm just going to go through next to scaling. And in scaling instance count, I could put any number I wanted in there. And of course, the organization wants two. The scale policy, it's on manual, means I'll be doing it myself. When it's on custom, I want it to scale up or scale down based on some rules I will put in there. So these are the positions we are putting the rules of increasing or decreasing the number of instances. But we do not have that one right now. So we are going to go next to the management, and we are just going to create, because we've actually covered basically what they want in here. So, okay, of course, there's an issue with networking. Yes, that's because of the load balancing option I selected. I've not had I've not selected the existing load balancer. There's no load balancer right now. So I need to create a load balancer for that particular organization. So I'm just going to create a load balancer, and we're going to move on with our deployment. Of course, I'm going to put in a name. It will also be stored within the resource group that I created. I'm going to call it LB demo. And of course, TCP, UDP, everything else as default. Click create, next scaling, and click next review and create. So it checks to make sure that everything is done properly, of course. And that's one benefit. That's one thing I like about Microsoft over the AWS. It's way more user friendly. I mean, a lot of us have been using Windows devices, so it becomes easier for you by the time you get on the cloud. It's still the same process, still the same idea, very, very user friendly. They invest a lot in their user friendly interfaces. So we are going to go ahead and create this. And while it is being created, of course, I didn't remember to point out tagging, but you could also tag these virtual machines just by pointing a name to it. So we are just looking at how you create a virtual machine for an organization. And that particular organization needs you to do some particular things for them. So you're creating a virtual machine in order for them not to spend too much. So it's best for you to make sure that the virtual machine you create does not make them spend way beyond budget. So that is for XYZ. It's being created. We are going to go back to it once it is completed. And let's go ahead and look at some of our information in here. So of course, the companies that use Microsoft Azure, there are currently about 537,837 companies, as at the time I was checking this. And the companies actually using Microsoft Azure are often found in the United States, and most of them are majorly in the retail industry. And Microsoft Azure is actually most being used by companies with about 1 to 10 employees and about $1 million to $10 million in revenue. So it's something to note. It's also a deal to understand. And These are some of the companies, some of the organizations that actual popular organizations that use Microsoft Azure. BMW, uh, actually, yes, some of the notable companies, of course, you see BMW. BMW uses Azure. GE Health uses it does GE Healthcare. They use Azure, and they use the data box option on Azure, where they can shift large quantity of their data directly into Microsoft. So, and also Coca-Cola too. And you can see Samsung also uses Microsoft Azure, the NBC News, and these organizations use Azure to store, manage, and analyze their data. They also use it to run their applications and services in the cloud. So basically, Azure's flexibility, scalability, and security features make it ideal. It makes an ideal choice actually for many of these businesses to use. So most of them, from startups and even large enterprises, all use Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Azure Virtual Machines. So it's also a very big thing. And yeah, I've compiled a list of best practices to use, for deployment when you are deploying a virtual machine. So we have these best practices, really important that you properly size the VM based on your workload needs so you don't spend too much. Also consider using availability sets when we're talking about availability sets. Like we mentioned, availability zones. Now availability set works within the zone, not outside the zone. So they work within the zone. The zones work within availability zones are more of within the region. The availability set is within the data center. So availability set or availability zones to ensure high availability and data redundancy. You should also try to make sure that you regularly monitor and optimize your virtual machines. That is, you need to monitor the cost. You need to make sure that it is well optimized. You need to make sure that it's running at a very good performance. So there are a lot of things to do. You should also utilize the ARM templates. The resource manager templates helps you to deploy resources more like using a blueprint. So more like it helps you to deploy the resources consistently. That's what it's for. Deploy the resources consistently. So when you have a template already, nobody else goes beyond the template to deploy something much worse, something that might cost more. So that is the idea in there. We also have here that you should utilize managed disk for storage and enable backups to protect against data loss, because data loss is actually very costly to any organization. You should also look at implementing the network security measures, such as network security groups, virtual network service endpoints. You need to employ all of those security things because they must be as secure as possible. What good is a virtual machine that is accessible to everybody on the internet? So what is the point? Except you want it to actually be accessible, but if it's supposed to be closed, let it remain closed with enough security to protect it. Also use marketplace offerings. I didn't go into the marketplace the last time, but marketplace is more like Azure Marketplace opens up to a lot of external users or external developers, so they can put up their own resources also on the marketplace. So when you are using the marketplace, the thing about using the marketplace is that when you deploy from the marketplace, it already comes with some pre-installed things already. So if it's pre-installed, of course, you know that you are not paying so much for it, and it's a good idea to always use that. So also there are some other things like Azure policy. You should try to use Azure policy. Azure policy would ensure that the virtual machines meet some specific criteria. So such as encryption or tagging or the security requirements. You want to force people to make sure that they do those things that are required within your organization. So you don't want to just leave it open so anybody can access it. Now we also have the option for tagging of the resource. You should try to tag your resource. I didn't put this on the slide, but I know it's important, and that's why I'm saying it. So trying to tag the resources, try to tag the resources. Assigning meaningful tags to your virtual machine resources helps you with better resource organization. So you have a better organization of your resources, and you are able to track the cost, and it allows you to categorize the virtual machines. It's actually understated by a lot of people, but tags actually are very proper. So tags are very important and good for organizations because it helps you to categorize virtual machines based on projects, not just virtual machines, resources. It helps you to categorize the resources based on project departments or the environment. So it also simplifies management and reporting, of course. If you are reporting in the organization, it simplifies it also for you. So compiled also a list of security best practices, and these are also important for you in the organization. Of course, you have to implement network security. Very important you implement network security and use the NSGs, of course, so that you can control the incoming and outgoing traffic for that particular virtual machine. Also, just-in-time access. Just-in-time access allows you to make sure that this virtual machine is only available publicly at a specific time. So maybe for 1 hour or for 2 minutes or something like that. So that is just-in-time access for the person who would be using it. So we also have secure remote access where you use VPN or Azure Bastion, which is access over HTTPS for the secure remote management of the virtual machines, of course. I'm also trying to enable disk encryption. Encrypt your disks. It's very important you encrypt the disks at rest so that it is not easily broken down. If the disk gets damaged or lost or something, an attacker does not have access to it because it is encrypted. So role-based access controls, which is RBAC, which allows you to assign users or groups to a particular virtual machine, should also be used. And try to enable Azure Security Center. Very important. It gives you security insights and recommendations from Azure directly. And the advanced threat protection also helps you to detect and respond to advanced threats. And also you can monitor security events by using logging and incident response and planning. And then this is just some organizations that actually use the virtual machines actively. So Mahes, very popular. I know a lot of people know this company. They containerized companies, or how do I call it? They ship containers, let's put it that way. So Azure VMs have enabled these organizations to optimize their workloads and achieve greater success. So of course, MyX is one of those kind of stories. They are the largest container shipping company, and they simply migrated their loads to Azure virtual machines, and they are able to reduce their infrastructure costs and improve their application performance. This was on their website. So another example also is Carnival Corporations, and that is those are in charge of cruise operations, boat cruises and all those things. They are the largest cruise operators, and they are also using Azure virtual machines, and they're able to improve their website performance and provide a better customer experience. So the point in there is these companies are actively using the cloud to go through their workload. So the success stories, of course, just highlight the benefit of using Azure virtual machines for your workload optimization. So in order not to forget what we are doing behind, I'm just going to click there. I can see the resource has been created. The deployment is completed. I'm getting the notification. If I go into the resource, I get the tabs to manage this effectively. Of course, I produced it based on the organization's needs. It was completely in accordance with what they needed. And of course, as they grew, they could continue to, expand on it. They could continue to, if they actually had an outburst of customers, this would actually be able to assist them with it. So as we know, this is skill sets. You have the instances in here, and this is where you have the virtual machines that are actually running. These two are running right now. The deployments have succeeded. and you could go ahead and log into the virtual machine. It's just a normal virtual machine, but deployed simultaneously. So if you created a single virtual machine each time and the company needs about 10, that would be a lot of work. So it's better you have more like a skill set. So it's, you can see it's a virtual machine with everything a virtual machine needs, but it's just part of a skill set. So if we click on the operating system here, we have the option to look at the operating system. We have licensing and all of those things for the operating system. This is where we have the disk, the managed disk, of course, and we can choose to add a disk into the virtual machines, or increase the virtual machines, or take away a disk, or swap the disk. So that is basically a lot of things. You have a lot of options here, and you can go ahead with those particular ones. So at this point, this is actually the end of my presentation right now, and that is that is all for today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a nice, interesting section, Ayo. It's very interesting. Actually, we never had this kind of section before in Vision Machine and also Vision Machine skill set. It's actually funny. Last week I was working on a project with my work that involves Vision Machine skill set. So using VMSS as a skill set for agent pools in Azure DevOps. So I created a VMSS using Terraform last week, and then scheduled it into Azure DevOps environment as a self-service hosted agent for compute for us, for my team to do DevOps. So, like you said, you need to do like the scaling capability, like you mentioned about company. They don't know which amount of compute they need to know, do, whether big or small. So like the D series you mentioned is like often used by companies. And the good thing that you need to scale through in terms of, okay, when your compute increases, that's the beauty of VMSS. Like it helps you to scale out and also scale down when there is no compute needed, and then you're saving costs, which is really tremendous, than just spinning up a vision machine. And the size, you don't know whether the size is big or not. It's very rigid. Yeah, very
Yeah,
interesting.
of course, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So, guys, Olufola, Oliwa, Bola, Abdurrahman, any questions? Josh? Are you guys there?
Yes, me, I am. I don't know about as I am here. That was an interesting section. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked it.
I do. It's a short section and it was quite straight to the point, and it's just like a checklist when you need to get things done and you don't get to miss things that you also to do. That's really nice. Thanks.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So is there like a question if anyone didn't understand everything? Because obviously we can't expect that everybody got everything. It's not possible. Most of these things I put in here was based on my experience while working with organizations. So I say, okay, they have, of course, I'm young, of course, but I've gone a bit far with these things. So they always have some issues going on, and you notice even the technical guys in there that you expect to know quite a lot actually having the same issue with the management, and it now comes to you to decide for them what they should have decided initially. And that was why I had quite a lot of compilations on all of these things. But I know, of course, the knowledge cannot be totally complete because knowledge is not something you have all at once. So if you have something like a question, maybe just even an input or something that points to something that was missed, please, you can also, the class is being recorded, so it will be helpful to someone somewhere, maybe 10 years from now, 2 years from now. We don't know, maybe tomorrow morning. So you can just please go ahead and ask, please. Thank you.
Olufola, any question? I don't know if you're there.
No question for now. He's my lecturer.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's good. That's good. That's good.
All right. So I think
Oliwa Bola, any question?
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
I came in late because I honestly, I blame myself. I downloaded the wrong application for the past, since it was announced, this was announced. The moment I was trying to log in by 6 p.m., I realized that I needed Microsoft Meet. I have it on my system, but my system is there. So I had to download it. It took me a long time for me to be able to finish downloading. That was why I came in very late, extremely late. Next time, I'll be able to come on time. Thank you.
No worries. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Josh, are you still there? Dominic, Josh is my friend. But probably it's not there. Okay. If there's no other question, let's call it a day. Thank you very much, Ayomide. And we're looking forward to more sections from you in our community. And I think coming months I'll be presenting, then you'll be moderating for me. Okay?
Of course.
Thank you,
okay, guys.
As if I'm up to the task.
Thank you. Thank you for the section.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah.
Good night. Bye.